Scripture reading this morning will be from Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6, we'll be reading from the ESV. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me. And he said, Go and say to this people, Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull, and their eyes heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, How long, O Lord? And he said, Until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is a desolate waste. And the Lord removes people far away, and forsaken places are many in the midst of the land. And though a tenth remain in it, it will be burned again, like a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains when it is felled. The holy seed is its stump.
Good morning, brethren and friends. We're happy to see you here on this beautiful Lord's Day morning and grateful for the opportunity that we have to assemble together on this first day of the week and the first day of the week of this year, 2025. And we're so thankful that you are here, thankful that our guests are here visiting with us, and we welcome you back at any and every opportunity that you might have. And Happy New Year to all of you. I hope last year was a great year for you, and this year will be the same as we seek to draw closer and closer to God. It's usually this time of the year when many people will say, wow, where did last year go? For me, I say, where did it go in the last few years? It's hard for me to believe that we're now entering into a quarter of a century from the turning into 2000. Is that not something? It's hard to believe that's been now going on to 25 years since the year 2000 hit. But the Lord is good. He keeps providing. He keeps giving us all that we need and continues to take care of us. And we seek to make the most out of each day of life that we have. It's always a good time, of course, to begin a daily Bible reading if you are not currently doing that and determined to read the Bible every day throughout the year. There are different Bible plans that you can follow, some that you can find in Bible, some obviously online. An easy way to remember is 3 chapters a day, 6 days a week, 5 chapters a day on the 7th day, and you will complete the Bible in a year. Good way to spend a little time with God every day in your daily Bible reading. We're glad to be back with you. Appreciate your prayers. We had a safe trip. Glad to be home and be back here, although it's going to be short-lived. I'll take just a moment to explain why our schedule is the way it is over these few weeks. This trip that we just took last week was originally planned for October, you may remember. But the hurricane caused us to change plans. And so we were not able to go in October, so we had to put it off. And unfortunately, we already had plans next week. We'll be at Hannah and Levi's wedding in Utah. Jude, Aspen, and I are all in the wedding, so we have to be there. And before our plans were changed, we had already decided just to take a few extra days and see family in the area. So that's why we're gone a couple of times in just 3 weeks. So we would never do that intentionally. Again, the weather changed our plans for us. First thing we did was talk to the elders about it and explain the situation. I appreciate them being understanding and allowing such. But next week, you'll be blessed again. Josh Webster will be preaching in the morning. Mike Gifford will be preaching again next Sunday night. And I know that you're blessed by them. And we're glad to be here with you today, though. So let's open our Bible to Isaiah chapter 6 and get into our study in view of God. It's not necessarily a New Year sermon or a resolution sermon. I used to do that. I kind of backed off of the Easter sermons being the Easter sermons, the Christmas sermons being the Christmas sermons, the New Year sermons being the New Year sermons. I just thought, I'm just going to preach. There might be ways it can tie in to what you're seeking to accomplish in 2025. But I got to thinking a few years ago, there are some that we would love to see them here every Sunday, but sometimes we only see them at special events. I thought, well, they're probably only hearing the same sermon over and over and over. So why not just keep it flowing? Isaiah chapter 6 will be our study. You might want to leave your ribbon marker or Bible bookmark there, because we will be going to other books in the Bible, but we'll keep coming back here in view of God. Verse 8 is where we're going to begin. This is a popular verse to be quoted and taught, especially by preachers, and I would say probably especially by preachers in preaching schools, because there's that extra zeal, there's that extra fire that is sometimes there, wanting to go out and teach everybody and convert the world. That's a wonderful thing, and we need to all have that, not just preachers in preaching schools, not just when we're on mission trips, but that desire to have an Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 8 mentality all of life. Isaiah heard in verse 8 the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" It's interesting to me, you see it more so in the New Testament, the gospel accounts in the life of Christ, how often a question is asked to allow the people to respond. And the same would be true here. Well, who's going to go? Now let's set the stage. We're in the 700s BC. The northern kingdom, Israel, they're on the doorsteps of Assyrian captivity. We're very close to getting there in our Sunday morning study of the kings. The southern kingdom, Judah, they still have some time, but their captivity will come. But just remember where we are with the prophet Isaiah. And this book of this great prophet, it's not easy times, okay? It's much easier to be a preacher at the Wood Avenue Church of Christ, Florence, Alabama, January the 5th, 2025, than it was in the days of Isaiah. I guarantee you that. So that's where you are. That's where you are. That's the world around him. That's what's going on. And the question is, well, who's going to go and teach these people? Who's going to deliver this message? It's similar to what we see in Jeremiah. It's similar to what we see in Ezekiel, of course. And the response to it is a response why preachers love this verse. Then I said, "Here am I, send me." 5 beautiful words in a very powerful verse. Easier to speak them than it is to do them. But we must always have that mindset, whether it's preaching, service, or whatever it might be. Someone needs a visit. Here am I, send me. Someone is health or age, needs help around the house or the yard. Here am I, send me. Work needs done in the congregation, around the building. Here am I, send me. The spiritual side, what the church really is, and doing all that we have planned for this year, many things that we'll go into and try to accomplish. Here am I, send me. So this verse is a powerful verse to remember. Lord, I'm here. I can do this. Goes right along with Mike's class this morning. I'm available. I have that ability. I have that talent. Send me. Now, this is not to suggest not having this attitude, to change and not have an attitude like this, but it is to bring it into full focus. We need to be prepared because the Lord will send us, will He not? And it might be that I'm not really wanting to do what I say, and I'm not saying don't say it. I'm just saying let's get to where we need to be in our faith and our knowledge of the Word of God. Say, okay, yes, Lord, here am I. Send me. Send me. As powerful as this verse is, though, it just means that much more when we back up and we get a bigger picture of what is going on. Because as you know, there's not any one verse in the Bible that stands alone. Remember that. There's never a single verse in the Bible that stands alone. It always has to be taken in the bigger picture of the context of the scripture. It might mean the few verses before or after a chapter, obviously the book and the Bible as a whole. It always gets bigger, okay? A verse, you have to explain it by reading more verses. And then the chapter, then the book, then the Bible. It always gets bigger. So what I want us to do this morning, I want us to look at this chapter. And when we understand what else is going into this chapter rather than just those 5 words, here am I, send me, then I think this verse has an even greater meaning to it. So let's go back and begin. What did Isaiah see in view of God? What did Isaiah see? He saw the magnificent God in the first 4 verses. Let's notice this together. Again, it's important that we remember the times. It's important that we remember the years. We're in the 700s BC. We're in the kingdom of Israel is just, it's wicked, it's evil, it's in its downward slide spiritually, morally, murders, assassinations, evil within the land. So Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 1, let's read the first 4 verses again. In the year of King Uzziah, in that year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above it stood seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. Isaiah, in view of God, saw the magnificent God. And that is what we must do in all things, all days. Colossians 3, 1 through 4, we're looking upwards, of course. We need to always look at God and see God. Think about what Isaiah is seeing here. Think about what this great man of God, this great prophet is seeing. He's seeing the creator of the world. The only one true eternal God. Go with me to Psalms chapter 19, if you will. Go back just a few books to Psalms chapter 19, the 19th Psalm. Then we're going to go to Psalm chapter 33. So 2 that are near each other. When we think about the magnificent God, we think about him in all of his ways, but think about him in creation. In Psalm chapter 19 and verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day other speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There's no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Now flip over to chapter 33. Psalm chapter 33, beginning in verse 6. We're talking about the magnificent God. We're talking about his ability, Genesis chapter 1, to speak the world into existence, just like that. It's just awesome to think about who God is and how the heavens declares handiworks. You know, God has given mankind, men and women, the ability to do just amazing things. I mean, this building, when you stop and you look at the detail into this building, it's something I couldn't do. There are those who have the experience, have the talent, and took time to learn the ability to do this such work, to draw out the plans and to follow the plans. But there's a lot of detail into this building that even people of such trade could not do. It takes special people to be able to put together what has been put together here. And God, with just his breath, speaks this world into existence. And all that we have and all that we see and all that is. And what amazes me that I especially think about this time of the year as another year rolls around. You go back to that creation week when he created each day what was needed to be created on that day. And he put everything into motion for the world, the earth to continue to provide. New plants, new vegetables, new fruit, each to reproduce after his own kind, the meat that is provided. And here we are all these years removed from that creation week. And God not only spoke the world into existence then, but he gave the world the ability to continue to reproduce. And not only this is something that I never thought about till just a few months ago. Someone said something, I don't know if it was here at Wood Avenue or somewhere else, but you think about some of the disasters that the world has seen, such as man-made disasters, such as oil spill in the Gulf. But God also took care of the world being able to cleanse itself. Isn't that amazing? That God had all of this in mind and all this is taken care of. Knowing that sometimes things happen, right? I've said many times before, trying to take a picture of the landscape and you've got something in the way, a power line or something in the way. And I thought, man, this world is a beautiful place if people weren't in it. You know, we come in just kind of leave stuff in the way. This, the magnificent God that gave us this world that we're in. Psalm chapter 33, beginning in verse 6. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. He gathers the waters of the sea together as a heap. He lays up the deep in the storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast. And you could go on and on here in Romans chapter 1 and how it's, you know, you can see God through the things of the world, and that is here. Isaiah, before making this statement, here am I, send me, sees God. And when we stop and we see God, we realize how little we are, collectively even. If all in this room this morning could spend some time together after our worship and we just gather together and we were just to talk about our talents, our abilities, our knowledge, if we were to share together our knowledge, I mean, there's a lot here. But it fails in comparison to God. And that brings us to our next point. Isaiah saw the miserable self. Notice in light of and in view of how magnificent God is, Isaiah then, going back to our text, Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 5, so I said, woe is me. Woe is me. It's one of the greatest prophets in Scripture. It's one of the men that we all want to be like, right? I want to be like Isaiah. I want to be faithful like him. Woe is me. I'm undone. Again, going back to verses 1 through 4, here's God. Woe is me. Here's me. Here I am. Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of the people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal which he had taken with the tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth with it and said, behold, this has touched your lips. Your iniquity is taken away and your sin is purged. Isaiah is recognizing his place. I'm not worthy to be in the presence of God. We'll sometimes say that, right? I'm not worthy to be in the presence of God. I'm not worthy to be here. I'm not worthy to be anywhere. When I start thinking about my sin, when I start thinking about my unworthiness, when I start focusing on God, that's the key. Because I might choose to look outward to you. And here's the thing. If I do that, eventually I can find someone that I'm better than. Based on our definition of it here in the southeastern part of the United States of America. I can say, okay, I'm good when compared to, I can find, not because I'm good, it's just because there's enough people in this world. But again, that definition would be different if you go to other areas of the world. What we say is good and right, other people say, no, this is what is good, and a completely different picture of it. So in all things, we must compare ourselves to God. That's what you see the great people of the Bible doing. You see Paul doing that. You see others doing that. They compare themselves to God rather than to one another. Because again, eventually, we can all probably find someone and say, yeah, okay, I'm a little better than this person. But that won't get it. That won't cut it. And that's not where our faith is. That's not what saves us, of course. We must understand this. We must realize this. And we must remember this. So in all things, we're always comparing ourselves to God. And here, this is something I was thinking about this morning as I was going back over the sermon. I don't know. You may or may not agree with me. I'm still thinking through this. It may be that we compare ourselves to others more than we realize, or at least for me, maybe more than I realize. If sometimes I recognize the shortcomings of other people, perhaps I'm doing that so I can build myself up. Do we ever talk about other people's shortcomings? Is that ever a topic of discussion? And it might be so I can feel a little better about myself. But the thing is, we're not judged by one another on Judgment Day. We're judged by God. So I want to always view myself according to God. And Brandon Jackson, a good friend of mine, preaches at the Hat Church of Christ. He once said, this isn't going to be the exact quote, but something to the effect of, God understands his perfections, and he understands our imperfections, and then he does all that he can to shorten the gap. That makes sense? God understands where he is, and he knows where we are, but he is doing all he can to shorten the distance between us so we can come into him and come close to him. So Isaiah in verses 5, 6, and 7 looks at himself and is like, I'm just a sinful man. I'm not worthy. You think about people who did the same. In Luke chapter 5 and verse 8, Peter, get away from me. I'm a sinful man. In Luke chapter 18 and verse 13, the tax collector praying, standing afar off, wouldn't even lift his eyes to heaven, beating his chest. He recognized it. I'm unworthy. I'm miserable. Paul, I am the chief of sinners. So it is the case that we see ourselves when compared to God in this way. And that leads us to our verse where we started, verse 8, the marvelous mission. Consider with me if we go back to our text. Now let's think about what's going on. Because remember I said that's a common verse that you hear. Those 5 words, here am I, send me. But we're trying to get a better understanding of what is going on in Isaiah's mind as he says this. Verses 1 through 4, God, you are magnificent. God, you are awesome. God, you are high. You are holy, 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 verse 4. There is not anything that can compare to you. God, when I look at myself, I can't even be in your presence. I'm not worthy. But how do I respond to that, Creator? Psalm 19, Psalm 33. You created me. You put me here. It's not your fault that I am who I am. But how, God, how, Creator of the world, do I respond to that? The mission, the obedience, the service, the teaching. If it were the case that my family and I had a financial need that we could not bear, not just short time, but perhaps lifetime, and you stepped in and said, I can bear that, then I think likely we would respond by saying, what can we do for the rest of our lives? Not that we can ever repay it, but what can we do for the rest of our lives to show our gratitude, to show our thanks? I think that's probably how all of us in this room would respond. What can I, this miserable man who fails in comparison to the magnificent God, do I can accept this mission that he has given me. Verse 8. Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? Isaiah said, here am I. The man who back in verse 5 recognized his inabilities, recognized who he was, but he's saying, but God, you want me to go? Father, Creator, you want me to go? I will go. I will teach. I will tell them. I'll do this. Because in you I'm saved, and in you I want to do everything I can do every day to please you, to obey you. Because not only is it going to help the people around me, ultimately it's helping me, myself, because I'm obeying you, and then I'm ready and I'm prepared to stand before you on Judgment Day. So Isaiah says, here am I, send me. Now before we move forward the last few verses, I want to make this comment. I want to go back to our second point. Sometimes if we're not careful, we'll view ourselves according to other people rather than God. And it could be, if I don't accept this mission, it's simply because I've forgotten where I was and where people are. You remember Galatians 2:20, Paul talks about how he's crucified with Christ. Paul put to death that person who was a murderer, that person who was taking Christians and placing them into prison. Paul put that man to death so he could become a new person. That's what you've done if you're a New Testament child of God. But here we are sometimes if I forget, where was I before Christ? Where was my life? Where was my soul? Where was my eternal destination before Christ? And it might be that I'll forget, where are the people around me that I come in contact with every day who are without Christ? And I forget to keep my view on God. I forget to remember where we are. And then I'm not always willing to say, here am I, send me. So then, he accepts this mission. And in verse 9, he said, go and tell this people. Who's the people? Remember the state of the world in Isaiah's day. Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy. Shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and return and be healed. Then I said, Lord, notice this, verse 11. So Isaiah, moving forward, is how great God is, how little I am, but I'll do it, I'll go. Have you ever signed up for something and then later you thought, what did I just sign up for? So I was baptized in November of 2000. The following February, the preacher said, I want you to do a devotional next Sunday night. And I remember, yeah, absolutely. And the only reason I'm telling this story, because I do remember this as if it were yesterday. Yeah, I want to do that. What's a devotional? I didn't even know what I was signing up for. Sometimes we do that, right? Sometimes we don't know what we're signing up. So I'm not saying that's fully the case in Isaiah's case, but I'm saying there he needs some understanding. He needs some clarification, because God's saying, look, they're not going to listen. They're not going to hear. But still someone needs to go tell them. And that is preaching. Preachers and teachers, we need not get discouraged when people don't obey, because the majority of the people in the Bible, Old and New Testament, don't obey. The Bible highlights some conversions to let us know what's out there. But when you're looking at the majority, consider Noah's day. The majority in the Bible don't obey. So he's saying it's going to be difficult. It's going to be tough. They need to hear this message. They need to know this message. But then Isaiah comes back in verse 11. Wait a minute, how long? He answered, until the cities are laid waste without inhabitant. The houses are without a man. The land is utterly and desolate. Remember, we're on the threshold of a captivity. The Lord has removed men far away and forsaken places, many in the midst of the land. But yet a tenth will be in it and will return and be for consuming. As a terebinth tree or as an oak, whose stump remains when it is cut down, so the holy seed shall be its stump. Now keep this in mind every time you read the Old Testament, especially the prophets, major and minor. Every time God talks about destruction, he always talks about the faithful few who will remain. He always leaves a way. Okay, that's just something to know. But here's the point. We as Christians who are out teaching this marvelous mission to our family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, classmates, it's not our responsibility, it's not our job to make the message acceptable. It's our job to make the message available. Many people, they have mastered making the message acceptable. That's why on this morning they're in stadium-like auditoriums with standing room, putting on some shows that would seem as if you're right out of Hollywood, because they have made the message acceptable for someone who's willing to spend an hour or two on a Sunday morning and feel good about life. That was not Isaiah's mission. That's not our mission. Our mission is to make the message available and not pervert it. And then there will be those who are seeking, who say, that's what I've been looking for. I've been looking for the real deal. I've been looking for the truth. I've been looking for unfiltered. I've been looking for somebody tell me, what do I do to meet God and go to heaven? They're out there. They're around us, and they want it. We close with this. Think with me, our points. When I look at myself, I realize that the only reason I can be here today and standing with a magnificent God is because of his mission, where Christians shared the gospel with me. And now we have a responsibility to share it with others just the same. May we always seek to be like Isaiah. Here am I, send me. And may we live up to that. We're going to sing a song of encouragement at this time. In a world full of people, Isaiah was found because he was faithful. In a world full of people, will you be found because you're faithful? Because you're a New Testament child of God, not perfect, but striving for it. Breaking your heart when you find yourself in sin. Repenting as a baptized believer, asking God for forgiveness, trying to do better, moving forward. Are you in that faithful, continual relationship with God where his blood will continue to wash away your sins? 1 John chapter 1. Do you need to get into Christ? What better way to begin this day, this week, and this year if you're not a child of God? If there's so many people who have been baptized perhaps later in life, whether it's later in their 20s or later in their 70s, have said, I don't know why I waited so long. Say that this morning and come this morning and say, I'm a believer, I'm repenting of my sins. I want to put on Christ right now in baptism so I can say, I might have waited longer than I should have, but no more. And I'm going to leave this building today saved from my sins, serving God in this marvelous mission. If there's anything at all that we can do to help you to go to heaven on this day, to change your life from where it needs to be to where it should be, from where it is to where it should be, we'd love to help you. We'd love to assist you. If you have a need to accept the Lord's invitation in your life, please come as we stand and as we sing.